Greetings, companions. Today I've crafted a fresh, captivating tale for your enjoyment. Make yourselves comfy, let us proceed, yet not this evening. Those two words echoed through my marriage. She repeated them again on a Tuesday night as I was brushing my teeth. I gazed at her reflection in the mirror, saw her already turning away, already pulling the blanket over herself. I acknowledged with a nod, rinsed my mouth, and switched off the light. No disagreement, no bargaining, just stillness. But that night, something inside me changed, something chilling and definitive. I stopped accepting her explanations. For 6 months it had been the same pattern, the same words, different nights. She'd arrive home late, leave her bag by the kitchen island, discard her shoes, and recount the day's troubles without being prompted. Deadlines, meetings, unending emails. I'd listen while placing dishes on the table, while rinsing them, while folding laundry she left on the couch. When she claimed to be drained, I accepted her words and opted for switching on the light rather than reaching for her. I occupied a role as a project manager in a construction firm, a position characterized by routine and setbacks. My mornings commenced prior to sunrise, and my evenings concluded with grit still on my footwear. During the night, I endeavored to create room for her. I prepared meals more frequently. I maintained cleanliness more diligently. I ceased instigating interactions. I familiarized myself with her routines: shower, phone, couch, bed. The distance between us expanded subtly, like an underlying change within a wall's structure. During weekends, I proposed strolls, movie marathons, and breakfast dates. She concurred, then rescinded her acceptance an hour later, citing work as the culprit that invaded her home once more. I consistently offered consent. I accumulated obligations in a manner similar to how I organized rebar at work, assuming it would sustain if enough was gathered. That night, following her utterance, "No," once more, she didn't immediately climb into bed. I heard the shower activate. I heard her phone vibrate on the bathroom shelf. I remained motionless, fixated on the ceiling fan, tallying its revolutions till the hallway light faded away. No detonation occurred, no words were spoken, yet there was an immobility that ensued. A fortnight hence, I returned home at noon to retrieve a document forgotten on the kitchen counter. My meeting had been hastened, and I required the certified permits prior to venturing elsewhere in town. I opted to park in the driveway rather than the street. Observing the house appeared as it customarily did during working hours: tranquil, partially drawn blinds, no lights aglow. The front door remained unlocked. Inside, the atmosphere reeked of soap and steam. She emerged from the hallway swathed in a robe, her dark, damp hair and one exposed arm suggesting she'd recently washed something off her hands. Upon seeing me, she looked taken aback, enough to halt, but not enough to retreat. She declared she hadn't been feeling well, that she'd returned home early and took a rest. As she spoke, she adjusted the robe's belt and cast glances toward the bedroom. I walked towards the kitchen, grabbed a folder, and observed the disarranged bed. The sheets were askew, pillows awry, reminiscent of mornings when neither of us ventured out for work. She trailed behind me into the kitchen, still chattering, still fidgeting. She suggested it might have been something she ate. She insisted she didn't want to disturb me. She reached for a glass, filled it with water, took a quick sip. I nodded, as was my habit. I glanced at my phone screen, tucked the folder under my arm, and planted a kiss on her cheek before leaving again. Her skin felt toasty, as if she'd stepped out of a shower. Upon departing from the house, I noticed her standing in the doorway, robe still draped, watching my truck leave our driveway until it turned the corner. The next incident occurred a week later, around 4 in the afternoon. I finished early and stopped by the house on my way to the supply yard. Upon reaching our street, I spotted a dark-colored sedan exiting our driveway. It quickly reversed over gravel, skidding at the turn before I could read its license plate. I pulled over, remained parked in my usual spot, and scrutinized the vacant driveway for a few extra moments. The house emanated an unusual scent, not steam, but wine this time. She emerged from the hallway once more, her hair tied back now, her facial expression already composed. She claimed a friend had unexpectedly dropped by to deliver something. She spoke as if it was a nuisance. I set my car keys on the counter and walked towards the sink to wash my hands. 2 wine glasses stood there, both utilized, both displaying red stains along their rims. She continued talking, justifying the visit, explaining the timing, rationalizing the unfamiliar appearance of the car. I nodded in response and reached for a towel. Her friend's name was mentioned again, the one she frequently cited. I chose not to interrupt. After drying my hands, I looked at the glasses one last time before departing for the garage. On the second day post that, during an early morning trash collection, I spotted something protruding from the bin by the curb. It was a folded once discarded box, a brand we'd never purchased. Standing there with the lid open and feeling the chill of the morning breeze on my hands, I waited for a neighbor's garage door to rise. I closed the lid and returned indoors without disposing of the trash. Since then, my schedule became irregular. I started arriving home at varying times, occasionally in the late morning, sometimes in early afternoon, other times not at all. I didn't disclose this to her. I didn't provide any explanations. I simply altered my routes and observed. On the fourth day, as I approached the street around midday, I noticed the same car again. A dark blue Honda Accord was parked where my truck usually stood. This time it didn't hastily leave. I slowed down, drove past the house, circled the block, and returned. By then, the driveway was vacant. I parked, entered, and discovered her in the kitchen, phone clutched, robe ajar at the neck as if hastily donned. She remained silent before I spoke. She waited. Subsequently, she admitted to working from home and losing track of time. Her tone remained steady. However, her eyes betrayed her. That evening, following dinner, I took the dog out for a walk, keeping the leash secured around my wrist. The usual route was followed. 3 houses down, I passed Brad's residence. Lights were on in his garage, the door wide open, and his car parked in the driveway, identical in color, model, and the dent near the rear bumper that caught my attention when the sun hit it at a certain angle earlier in the week. Brad was inside the garage with his back to me, retrieving a cooler from the trunk as if it were any other night. I didn't pause nor glance back. The dog tugged once, then resumed its pace as we returned home. Upon unlocking my front door, she was in the living room, crossed-legged on the couch, laptop open, appearing unfazed by any occurrence outside our house. I fastened the leash, cleaned my hands, and settled opposite her. She narrated her day's events. I remained silent, no words that evening, nor the following morning or subsequent day. I carried on with my usual household routines. Coffee brewed at the scheduled time, lunch prepared similarly, keys placed in their customary bowl by the entrance. Still, she chatted about work calls, deadlines, her exhaustion. When she repeated, "Not tonight," I nodded and switched off the light. In the next couple of days, I stopped by the grocery store on my way home. I bought charcoal, lighter fluid, steaks, chicken buns, a case of beer. Back home, I left the bags on the kitchen counter and began to clean the grill in the backyard, producing enough noise for her to come to the sliding door to investigate. She inquired about my intentions. I informed her that I was considering inviting people over on Saturday, just neighbors, nothing elaborate. She paused briefly, then stepped outside. She suggested Saturday might not work. She mentioned her schedule was full. She pointed out the yard wasn't prepared. I continued to clean the grate and assured her it would be okay. I brought up our lack of social activities recently. That evening, I sent a few messages. Brad's contact was saved from last year's block barbecue. I invited him and his spouse along with 4 other neighbors. I kept the invites informal. The same message was sent to all. By Friday night, everyone had responded affirmatively. She hurriedly moved around the house on Saturday morning, cleaning already clean surfaces, changing outfits twice before noon. She asked if she should prepare a salad. I told her to decide herself. When Brad and the rest arrived in the afternoon, she stood next to me on the patio with an overly wide smile, holding an unopened bottle. The grill was already lit when everyone found their spots in the backyard. A faint smoke rose, carrying the scent of meat and lighter fluid. Standing beside the cooler with 2 other neighbors, Brad's boisterous laughter filled the air, his bottle already perspiring in his grip. The same carefree smile she'd worn the previous summer adorned her face, as if no troubles had ever beset this neighborhood. My wife shuttled between the table and kitchen, offering drinks and straightening unnecessary napkins. She was restless, constantly on the move. As Brad approached the patio, my wife subtly adjusted her position, maintaining distance while avoiding obviousness. I remained by the grill, flipping steaks, pressing chicken with a spatula. When the flames surged, I closed the lid and waited. Conversations revolved around weather, work, the latest additions to our neighborhood. Plates filled, chairs squeaked. At some point, Brad moved closer, raising his beer in my direction, commenting on the enticing aroma. I acknowledged him with a nod, lifted the lid once more, and turned the steaks again. Then I spoke, still facing the grill, announcing that from next week, my Tuesdays would be rescheduled. I mentioned that I would depart the site post-lunch instead of extending my stay, making it seem like an unimportant detail. I also hinted to Brad that he might find it convenient to visit our place in the morning if he needed something. The silence that ensued was deafening. Laughter was absent, replaced by a cough. Brad's smile faded into a rigid, colorless expression. My wife accidentally dropped her glass onto the concrete, shattering it near her feet. I nonchalantly placed the lid back and arranged the steaks on the side of the grill as if this had been our plan all along. The following day, I packed without announcing it. I retrieved a suitcase from the hallway closet while she was still asleep and positioned it on the bed in the guest room. I neatly folded clothes as per my usual routine for work trips, rolled shirts, stacked jeans, boots by the door. I took my laptop, chargers, personal documents from the rarely opened drawer, and left everything else where it was. Midway through, she entered the doorway, her uncombed hair and clutched phone characterizing her arrival. She stood observing me as I sealed the bag. She uttered my name once, but I chose to remain focused on my task, loading the suitcase into my pickup truck and departing our driveway shortly after sunrise. Barefoot, she trailed onto the porch, now talking into her phone as I drove off. By the time I arrived at my brother's place across town, 8 missed calls awaited me. Upon entering his residence, I placed the suitcase near the couch, sat down, and left my phone on the table, unopened messages piling up with her name recurring on the screen throughout the afternoon. That night, my brother prepared grilled chicken on his back deck. We ate in relative silence. The phone vibrated during dinner, continued during the darkening sky, and persisted even after midnight. I turned it face down. By morning, there were more missed calls than I cared to count, notifications overflowing the screen. I opted not to clear them or respond to any of them. I remained in place. A week subsequent, my sibling brought up the matter casually as we were seated at his kitchen table, strewn papers before us. He disclosed he had spotted Brad's spouse that morning, loading luggage into the rear of her SUV. He described her appearance as if she was departing town, unlike someone embarking on a vacation. He added that Brad wasn't present. In the afternoon, I dropped by the grocery store near his residence. As I stood in line with a cart of essentials, the register chimed ahead of me. A neighbor from my street was nearby, conversing with the cashier as usual. She cast an eye in my direction, identified me, and her tone dropped involuntarily. She shared that she'd heard Brad's spouse had initiated divorce proceedings. She stated the legal process was already underway. She delivered it swiftly, as if data needing to be discharged before it got stale. I paid, nodded, and left with my bags. Back at my brother's abode, my phone buzzed again. The display on the screen didn't alter. Messages continued pouring in, now arriving in clusters rather than individually. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I put the phone aside and stepped outside to sit on the steps. That night, for the first time since leaving, I passed my own street. Brad's driveway was vacant, his house dark. Conversely, my house, located 3 doors down, was brightly lit in every room. I didn't hesitate to speed past. A week later, both houses were occupied by solitary inhabitants. On the following Monday, during my lunch break, I met with an attorney in an office above a dental clinic. The walls were lined with framed certificates and covered in beige carpet. I slid the folder towards him without comment as he leafed through it. He asked some questions about dates, names, addresses. I responded to his queries as I would during site inspections, briefly, precisely, without extra details. By the end of our meeting, the paperwork was neatly arranged in front of him. He assured me he'd take care of the filing and delivery, promising it would be sent by certified mail. After returning to work, I completed my day as usual with calls, emails, and a delayed shipment. At night, I returned to my brother's home to find another series of missed calls on my phone. I placed it on the counter and ignored it. 3 days later, an email from the attorney confirmed the documents had been sent. I didn't pass this message along or print it out. Instead, I closed my laptop. That night, my phone rang again with the same caller ID and vibration pattern. It lit up on the coffee table, but there was no voicemail this time. The following week was uneventful as I stayed with my brother, leaving early for work and returning late. My phone seldom rang during this period. Whenever it did light up, I ignored it. We didn't speak during that entire duration. By the time the waiting period commenced, the house I had lived in for years felt like a mere street address, holding no emotional significance. 3 months later, I encountered her under the harsh lights of the produce section. I was grabbing a bag of oranges as a shopping cart halted next to mine. The woman looked thinner, her hair casually tied back instead of styled or arranged. She clutched a list in one hand as if it was anchoring her. Upon recognizing me, her mouth opened before any words escaped. She moved closer, causing our carts to bump. A sound came from the child's seat, a bottle rattling. She called out my name, but I remained silent, placing the oranges in my cart and steering it down the aisle. She persisted, her steps quickening, repeating my name louder this time, hoping volume would draw me back. Shoppers milled around us, selecting apples, examining labels, feigning ignorance. At the dairy case corner, she grabbed my jacket sleeve. Her grip tightened and her expression turned hopeful, mirroring a previous desire to change the topic. I advanced, causing her to let go. She stated she merely wanted to converse. She indicated it would be swift. She remained stationary, staring intently at my face, attempting to find a way in. I navigated my cart past her and moved onward. At the cashier's, I settled the bill, loaded the bags, and exited into the parking lot. The automatic door closed behind me. I didn't glance back. I didn't decelerate. Upon departure, her vehicle remained parked. I drove home by myself. Thanks for sticking around until the end. Care to share your thoughts on this narrative? Express them in the comments. Subscribe, as additional authentic and concealed tales are imminent.